your boat?
Yeah, this is the beginning of that journey. So I'm in upstate New York now, and then after this week, I'll make my way downstate into New York City to go to the UN.
Wait, are you taking the boat all the way to New York
No,
City?
I'm taking the train. That would be
Oh,
amazing, but I'm taking the train.
oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
I can't imagine what it would take to dock in Manhattan.
It's got to be
Probably
doable.
thousands of dollars, though.
Maybe Hoboken. It's cheaper.
There's a lot of slips in Long Island, but again, a lot of competition for them.
Right. Hi, Claire. All right. I do not have a lot of planned for today. I have been busy with proposal stuff. My apologies. I'm very excited for next week. And we have a session on a side event on the Friday. Claire and Ruth are helping to organize that. And we are going to be at 3:20 on Friday. So we are the last session of the UN Open Source Week. And I hope you can attend. We're also going to be joined by STEM Garage Africa. So excited to meet them and work with them. They have a similar mission. So I think Clara was smart to align us. Um, and the way the session is going to work, we're still kind of formulating it, but I think it's going to be two 40-minute sessions. The first 40 minutes is going to be, and Claire, correct me if I'm misspeaking, but the first 40 minutes is going to be two 15-minute talks, each followed by a 5-minute Q&A. STEM Garage Africa is going to give the first talk, and then I will give the second talk. Anybody who wants to join me up there is more than welcome. I'm mostly going to give a survey and talk about not a survey, I'm just going to talk about what we have been doing and who's involved, and kind of give an overview of the problems that we're trying to address in our mission. Um, and then the second session, we're calling it an interactive panel session. I'm hoping it's more of a facilitated session where we can get some actual outputs from the group, to help drive what we're going to do going forward. So we have some questions there. If others have other questions that they would like us to ask or think are important for us to ask, I'm all ears. So it will be what we make of it. And I'm just mostly excited to get good people in the room trying to solve these challenging problems together and see if we can make some progress. And obviously we'll have time, I think, to talk over the week and see how much progress we can make, or we can pivot if anything comes up. Anybody have any questions about it? And we got 2 thumbs up from Michael Downey, so I'm excited that he's supporting, and I hope that he will be able to attend as well. So we'll see how it happens. Oh, and Jonathan Starr's already there. Awesome.
I think he basically almost lives pretty close by.
No, he's in Vermont. Well, I guess that's
I
stone's
don't know, to a
throw to New
Midwest, to a
York.
Midwesterner, that's close by.
Right, that's true. Does anybody have any questions or input they want to talk about that session? Thoughts? Thumbs up, thumbs down. Silence. All right, I'm happy to see more people here today. I was nervous the last few weeks. Maybe I just don't know the academic schedules. Was worried that we were losing oomph. I'm a little disappointed personally that we haven't achieved more. Um, so I guess beating myself up. I haven't
No, I
had.
think
Oh, go ahead,
I
Sean.
think this group has achieved a lot. Um, I mean, you're all here, and this is a forum where you're organizing a lot of the UN stuff, and you're bringing together, a bunch of different folks I recognize as thought leaders in this group. I think this group is fantastic. I don't know what it is you're hoping to achieve, David, but it takes longer than we all think.
Thanks for saying that. Yeah, I guess I'm just
Yeah,
beating
yeah.
myself up because I wanted to have some concrete stuff to demo. I feel like Remy's been doing amazing stuff, and I'm disappointed that we haven't been able to take that and package it and have some prototype or something that we can show off during this week. But
I think Remy's hand is up
oh yeah, go
for.
ahead, Remy.
Yeah, so along that thread, uh, we have been secretly plotting and scheming because we haven't, I haven't been around in the last couple of these. I've had conflicts and we've been, hacking on other stuff. But I was hopeful that the hackathon at the UN would offer us an opportunity to do some UN SDG related work. And it seems like after doing the orientations in the past week or two that it's very narrowly focused on like super specific projects. So my original plan, we even talked about as a team like going rogue potentially and just like hacking on something UN SDG related while that was going on. Um, I think Monday we're shifting towards the maintain-a-thon. It looks like that unconference is going to have a lot of juicy stuff in it. But the side event on Tuesday starts at 4 p.m. That's correct, right? So there's sort of the early part of the day on Tuesday, which is still part of the hackathon, where, we might be able to come together and hack on a little bit of something in the EcoSoc chamber potentially. Um, Throwing that out there as an idea. I know there's a lot of logistical, considerations, and it is next week, so there's not a lot of time to plan. But just throwing that out there as like an idea of maybe somewhere where we could play around with something that could be demoable as a cherry on top to the plan that you already have for the presentation on that's coming up on Friday.
Okay, that sounds amazing. Then yeah, we will keep space for the cherry. I'll try to have the ice cream and some whipped cream, and then we'll
Huh.
we'll have room for the cherry. Um, I've been eating ice cream every day. I'm in Cape Cod right now, and there's a ice cream store like half a block from the house I'm in, so it's on my mind.
Ria has a hand.
Yeah, before I jump over to Ria, is the maintainer a thon? I thought that was going to be like an open space where anybody could work on anything. Um,
It it seems like it's an unconference right now. At least what I saw today in the email, it was very like pitch your unconference talk. But also, last I knew, it was also being held in the EcoSoc chamber. So the hackathon will be happening all around us? Question mark. Like, I'm not sure how they do the separation with the breakout rooms and stuff like that. But in theory, everybody's in the EcoSoc room, and all of these things are happening there at the same time. I don't know what that looks like in practice, but that's what the literature makes me believe, at least.
okay, that's great. Yeah, I think all their intentions are good. I went to the sessions and I'm excited to participate. I'll be there all day Monday, and then Tuesday we have our Curious event, so I won't be able to be there on Tuesday. And we have a few students that are coming, and I think one's going to participate in the edit-a-thon, one or two are going to be in the hackathon. Um, but it's very unclear. I think it's kind of unstructured at this point. So all good intentions. So I think hopefully we can move some things forward. That will be fun. Um, yeah, we'll just play it by ear and see what happens and make the best of it. Ria, sorry, thanks for waiting.
No problem. I was curious because I responded to the registration like I can't get to New York City and I don't know that I have anyone located in that geo to attend this conference, but it looked like there was a remote option that was available. And I responded, but I didn't get any feedback on that, so I don't know if I just did something wrong or the reason I wanted to suggest this was I have a developer who is working on an open source project that relates to computational fluid dynamics. and machine learning, which sounds way more scientific than I am. But I know they've used it for doing things like mapping the ocean waves to assess environmental kind of things. And I thought that might play into one of the UN's SDG goals, particularly via the environmental issues. But I just wasn't clear on whether or not this is a good fit, or if this is even the forum to raise that, or if I should see if I could get the developer who's involved in this project to connect with somebody at the conference.
Does anybody have any answers? I see Claire.
Well,
You know.
Yeah,
ahead.
just on that, from a logistical perspective, PwC have confirmed that there will not be, for example, remote participation in the side events in the PwC building. However, that sounds like an amazing example. And I suppose one of the things that we've discussed in another panel session was the idea that we could gather resources that we could share with participants afterwards. And I just wanted to kind of point out that I think examples of open source that support the SDGs is something that I think it would be wonderful to have as well. So if you're thinking about outputs, David, that I think that, you know, even gathering those beforehand there afterwards would be a great output. So sounds great. That's all.
Yeah, I think that is a good, I think that's an excellent thing. My understanding is that the only remote part of the conference may be the Wednesday and possibly the Thursday. I don't know if they're setting that up to have some remote capability. One of my coworkers has registered because they had some tab that said remote. And so we're trying to get feedback for her of how she can join remotely. So I think but I don't think the hackathon has any remote option. Remy?
All
do you
right,
know?
so it's remote for viewing other presentations, but not participating in a more material fashion.
That's my understanding.
And in terms of if you want resources or some ideas, what form would you like that to take? I mean, I can, you know, provide you an article in the GitHub repo, but I don't know that that necessarily connects the dots. Do you need something that more connects it to the SDG itself, or something else?
I don't know what I need. We're still trying to gather the information. So our overall mission is really to start to align open source projects with the SDGs. So if your developer, you know, has an open source project and is willing to be like an alpha beta tester for us, that would be amazing. And then I know for the hackathon, some of the things are very mapping specific. There might be a good fit. And I think the UN, we've talked a lot about hackathons, and I think the UN is kind of on board with, they don't want this to just be a short-term thing. They want this to have legs and some of these projects to continue. In fact, I think they're tailoring it to go with some of their UNESCO projects. Am I getting the name right? That so that they are continued and they're not just, you know, worked on for a day and then dropped. They're meant to have legs. So maybe there's a way that this project could integrate with some of the work that they're doing. We could try to connect them together. I'm not sure.
All right, we can cover it offline if you want to either drop your email and I'll connect to you, David, or vice versa. I'm not sure what you meant by being a beta tester of the conference, if that was a specific.
Sorry, one of the what I was talking about at the beginning with like the prototype that we want to build is something that Remy is already doing for the federal government, is helping open source projects sort of create some standards so that open source projects can identify some metadata about the projects themselves. And one of the new metadata that we want to add is what are the SDGs that a project might be addressing. And so he's done things, but it's not related to the SDGs. It's related to different government metadata that they need. And we were talking about expanding that to the UN SDGs. And so he could be where I think at the next stage is to get a prototype out there that does this work, and we'd be looking for different open source projects that are willing to kick the tires on it and try it out. And the idea is it would put like a README file or JSON metadata in each repo. And then GitHub APIs or others can search and see, okay, here's the, eventually thousands of projects that are addressing SDG 2 or SDG 4. And you could start to really have some powerful metrics behind it.
And Remy, is that the digital public goods link that you put into the chat?
So we definitely know what SDGs we are related to, and we are like a little further along in our journey. What this working group has developed is something that's like, I'm an open source project, maybe I'm related to one of these SDGs. How do I know which ones might relate to the things that I'm doing? So it's like a questionnaire that we'll go through and say, do you do environmental stuff? Do you do water stuff? Do you do access stuff? And then it'll say, hey, it looks like your project might be related to these SDGs. Check out the Digital Public Goods Standard to give you an idea of like where you might want to go on your journey in the future. And building out that like lead generation for the SDG projects, because the Digital Public Goods Alliance is there if you know for sure that that's what you're going towards. But there's a lot of open source projects that don't even know the SDGs exist. So we're trying to use this as like a feeder program to get people into the DPGA pipeline, if that makes sense.
All right, cool, thanks.
And then once we have the inventory, CHAOSS can do metrics, and we can say, hey, it looks like you have, these goals as a project. We can help you get more maintainers, contributors, reduce your risk, improve your sustainability, etc. And then also eventually come up with how much closer are you to achieving your SDG goals as another tie-in. But I think that's further on in the roadmap and also more distant from the core work that CHAOSS is doing, but like not outside of our realm of expertise. And, I see this continuing on, for some time, but that's how I see, the future. There's very like Remy's personal take on what the future might look like. There are a lot of folks in this group who are doing amazing work also. That's just like one voice of the choir that we have here.
You're singing in harmony with me. Yeah, and I think there's a lot of great CHAOSS voices that are bringing in other ways of, how do we get non-STEM people also to participate more in open source, and how can they help identify projects? How do we not burden maintainers with a whole bunch of forms, making their life easy? But then some of the really exciting metrics questions of how do you tell if projects are doing good for the world and meeting these indicators and targets, the really challenging questions that are fun to try to answer. Thank you for whoever is taking notes. I greatly appreciate that. I don't think I have anything else. I'm going to open it up to anybody else who has any topics they want to discuss. I'm a little bit in vacation mode, so I apologize. Anyone going once?
Remy raised his hand.
Oh, okay, cool. Go ahead, Remy.
Yeah. So, I've been talking a lot. So if anybody else has stuff that they want to get into the queue here before I go on to the next topic, please raise your hand and I can be patient and wait. But if not, going once, going twice, we have been working on this web form concept that the first time we forked it was for the SDG form. And since then, I don't know. We've probably forked our web form stack at least 4 or 5 times now, and the latest version, we added support for emailing the results to a particular place. We added support for filing issues on a particular repository, and we also added support for filing a pull request against a particular repository as well. There are some limitations. Filing issues requires you to be signed into GitHub because you need to have a GitHub account to file issues now. I don't always think that was the case. I believe once upon a time you were able to file issues on repos unauthenticated, but it makes sense that like spam and trust and safety, et cetera, there's probably a good reason for requiring auth. And then for the pull requests, it requires you to have a personal access token with the right permissions. So that bar is like kind of high. You have to like know what you're doing with GitHub, and even if you know what you're doing with GitHub, you got to have like a understanding of how to use the keys and the tokens, which is like advanced GitHub. But those things are built into our form stack now, and we have deployed them in other projects. So I posted it in chat as an idea, but I think that just updating our current SDG form to add these features to it, if nothing else, to like send an email when somebody fills out the form to whoever we want in CHAOSS, or file an issue on the SDG form repository itself so that we can have like start collecting these projects. Those could potentially be decent things to have updates for the panel that's coming up at the UN. And I don't think it would require too much heavy lifting because it's the same stack. But, you know, it was a long time ago when we shipped the SDG form, so I'm not sure how far we've diverged from the original form.
Is that something that you can demo to us, or how can we move it to the next step?
Yeah, we can do a demo real quick. Let's see. I guess the HHS form is probably the latest version, right, Sachin?
Yeah, the anti-data call is like the most up.
All right. Let me see if I can pull that up really quick.
I'll stop sharing so that you can easily share without confusing people.
Yep. Do you have that link real quick, Sachin? So my browser's all jacked up.
Yeah, let me look for it real quick. I'm gonna send it in chat.
Thank you. All right. Thank you. Cool. Okay, so sharing screen now. This one. Okay. So folks can see this tab here. So that's that one. And then where's the code JSON generator form? This one. Okay. So since last our heroes demoed at this particular meeting, we added a new feature to this form. You give it a GitHub URL, and then it will automatically populate something like 12 out of the 37 or 40 different metadata fields. So
Nice.
It pulls the name of the repo and the description. And then this is the metadata standard for the federal source code inventory, but it also includes the public code.yaml international standard we learned about at the OSPOS for Good Symposium last year. So it includes some other metadata that our international and national OSPOs also gather on their projects. So it will populate all of that stuff, like, tags from your repository is auto-populated now, and some feedback mechanisms automatically populates your issues to automatically populates like when it was modified and last updated. There's still plenty of stuff that needs to be filled in by a human, but you can generate your code JSON, and then there's a download button to download the file locally, which is what the form has always done. But then we added the create pull request and create email, which also are new buttons. The latest iteration of this we just deployed for an internal project at HHS to start calling out like where the GitHubs are, basically. And so we're at CMS, we're in the OA, and we're in DSAC, and we're the OSPO, and we have, repo and repo, github.com, DSAC-MS metrics, and it was created today, and it's ongoing, and it's never ended. It's managed. Remy, and email is open source at CMS, hhs.gov. Okay. Cool. So there's the metadata that has all the stuff in it. And then we can download the form. We can create a GitHub issue. So this will automatically populate the issue on the repository. So you can imagine that instead of this being all of the metadata for an HHS thing, it's the form for like which SDGs are you a part of, and it will file this on our repository with the right data. And then you just click create issue. Also, nice. Cool, auto create issue, that's sweet. I didn't know we had that. And then the last one is an email button. So it will take and populate it'll open your email and auto populate an email with the results in it to the right email address, so that you can do manual email without doing a bunch of fancy auth and whatnot, because running an email server is a lot of overhead for filling out a form. I see some questions in chat. Yep, cool, Sachin had to bounce. Okay, so don't fill out that form. But this JSON generator form, if people want to take a look at that, here's that, and here's the repository for it. And I believe the CHAOSS one is not in here. It's over here, and SDG. Okay. Maybe it is on our GitHub, actually. Isaac, you're still on the call, right?
Yeah, I'm here.
There it is. Okay, cool. So this is the UN-SDG form that we made originally. Let's see if this works. DSAC-MS UN-SDG form. It doesn't. I guess we didn't deploy this yet?
Maybe. That seems like what the behavior is that I'm seeing.
Yeah. I thought we had a working version of this up, but
Is the URL not responding?
it's not. It's giving me a 404
Okay.
UN-SDG form.
With GitHub pages, sites I've seen like weird configuration stuff break forms like this too. So It may not be anything you did or didn't do. It may just be some idiosyncratic thing that happened.
Yeah. Yeah, it could totally be that, or like some job failed. But that can be debugged later.
Let's see what happens. Deploying from main. One more time. It might take a minute or two to play. I think we're doing deploy scripts now too, instead of just running off the main branch, so that may not work just to enable it like that. But I put some links in chat to the forms that do work in case people want to check it out. But we did have a form at one point that asked things like, are you water related? And then if they said yes, it said, okay, cool. Here are the indicators for each of the water related things. Does your project deal with this? Does your project deal with that? And it drilled down specifically into those things so that you could indicate which SDGs you're in and which indicators your project relates to. Hopefully I'm not making that up. When we went to the George Washington University hackathon, I know that we had most of that functionality either, maybe it was they had it all laid out and designed and we didn't deploy it yet, but I could have swore like Dina and Nat would have a better answer. I think they worked on it more specifically. Mert, I don't think you were hacking on that repo.
No, I
Yeah.
worked a bit on the code.json generator form, but not this form.
Yeah. But, filling out the metadata portion, I could have swore we had that part. This is also very early on in our stack. Now we've, deployed it multiple times and I think we got the hang of it. So I think if we needed to start over again, we could. Sachin's not here anymore for me to sign us up to do that at the hackathon on Tuesday, but it sounded like he was open to it in chat earlier when I had mentioned it. So we feel some type of way because that was our original plan. And then we found out the hackathon was like, here are the 3 projects we're going to be working on and everyone has to pick one of them. So, we're a little torn on whether we should go rogue or not during the hackathon time.
But it's not going rogue, it's just switching to the maintain-a-thon instead of the hackathon. Right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that idea. I also think the hackathon things are pretty cool. So if your team wants to do that, I totally get that too. So
Do you know if any of the students coming from GWU were the ones that built out the SDG stuff at the?
no, I don't think they are.
Okay.
No. So I wouldn't count on that. And they had gone a different way. They were relying on AI to populate forms. And so I didn't really love that solution because there was a cost involved and there was sort of the AI dependency. So I prefer what you were talking about. We're having talking just like referring to the indicators directly and asking those questions and just making it really straightforward and simple. So I think that work would be something very achievable. Just go for each indicator, 3.1, 3.2, just, figure out the questions to ask and then help populate the form based on the answers without AI help. Because what they were doing was, I think, looking at the repo directly and guessing without bothering a maintainer or having them manually fill out the form, using LLMs to guess what topics were being covered. I like a little bit more. I think your approach, and we can add AI later if that makes sense, maybe as an option or not.
Yeah, I think that there are certain things like write me the project description if there isn't one, where it's like back in the day, there was a project that predated CHAOSS that was called OHLOH, OHLOH.net. They were acquired by Black Duck Synopsys at some point, but they had this really cool summarizer module thing that would tell you like this project is a web project that has increasing year over year commits with this much history, and it's written in these programming languages, and it had this like really cool natural language processing kind of a element to it, as opposed to like generative AI. And it would just string together all of these different metrics into like a Mad Libs kind of a template. So I think there's definitely room for doing that kind of generated content based on what's in a repository, based on what chaos metrics we can see, that I've been, putting on my wish list for our team for a while now, where I'm like, this OLO thing was really good back in the day. We should re-implement that for our metric stack. And I think you could do something similar for coming up with like descriptions of open source projects that, whether they do SDGs or not, but specifically in SDGs, if they answer all the questions about like which indicators, you can come up with a little narrative form and you could populate it by filling in the blanks.
Yeah, I think that's great. Also, just FYI, I've been working on our OSPO grant, and fingers crossed everything goes through, but we've changed it this upcoming 2 years to have student ambassadors. So we're going to have 2 undergrad and 2 grad students, and I want to put some of those grad students on this. So that'll be some more, like 20 hours a week. They'll be doing their studies, so you know how student workers are. They're swamped, but I think this would be a really fun project that we can sick them on to keep it moving forward starting next fall. That's one of my plans. To rule the world in a nice way.
As long as you're ruling the world.
Thanks, Remy. I really appreciate that. I think that's great. And yeah, look forward to seeing you and figuring out if we can move these things forward and get some good outputs and have some good discussions. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to New York. Sorry you won't be there, Sean. And we'll have to make some side event to come to St. Louis, right? That's where you are.
I'm in Columbia, but yeah, I could get to St. Louis fast.
Oh, okay.
I can get to Omaha fast too, for that matter.
All right, we'll have to set something up. Any other questions, thoughts?
Omaha would be a great place for the Nebraska problem conference. Like if we're going to do like a maintainability of open source, having it in Omaha would be like a very fun thing to try and do. Just throwing that
For
out
sure. For sure.
All right, well, thank you, everybody. I really appreciate your time, and ciao.
Ciao. Bye, everyone.